All right. Welcome to the Vertical Shift Podcast. This is Justin.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Tommy.
And I'm Bobby.
Let's get started. Bobby. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We got an interesting story tonight that we want to share with you via Bobby. And we are pumped to have him on here. Bobby, welcome.
Thanks for the welcome.
All
Glad
right.
to be here.
You know, the only other person I know named Bobby is on a cartoon.
Bobby's World?
No, that's, okay, two.
Yeah, two.
But no, isn't that Hank Hill's son's name, Bobby?
Yeah. I have a nephew.
Boy, Bobby, put your pants back on.
So I had this opportunity. My sister married a guy named Hank, and his last name was Hill. And I was like, hey, Bobby, nephew? And it never happened.
No.
That's okay.
My dad's name's actually Bobby. Like, not Robert.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just Bobby. I mean, it'd get much more country than that, right?
Hey, man. If you like it, roll with it.
I mean, he gave me my name,
I guess that's very roll
which I'm
tide
not,
of him.
which I'm not sharing about it. But anyway.
I don't like not having a microphone. It's hard.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and dive in and hear Bobby's story. So, Bobby, we're going to ask you some questions along the way, but we want you to get started for us. So tell us, man, where were you born?
Okay.
And we've already talked a little bit about this, but I want you to fill everybody in.
I was born in the big old town of Sykeston, Missouri.
Ooh.
Everybody knows it as the home of the Throne Rolls.
That's right.
Lambert's,
baby.
Yeah. My mom's from up there, and that's where I was born there. My mom grew up there. And then I ended up being there from about 1 to 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Then my mom moved here when she met my stepdad, who ended up raising me. They ended up moving here, got married when I was 3.
Okay.
And then moved back to Missouri for a little while with some things that happened in the family, and been here since second grade.
Yeah. I've talked about this a lot in the sense that, you know, I grew up in a great Christian home. My parents weren't perfect by any means, but they did a lot of things right.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people I felt like I had to come up with reasons to be mad or rebellious kind of thing. But, man, your story's filled with all kinds of crazy. And so, man, just tell us about your birth and where that came from.
So my mom was in the middle of a divorce with my sister's dad, her 2 daughters. My mom had a pretty tough upbringing, had a lot of struggles in her life with her mom passing young. And she had a lot of things happen in her life quick that no one should have to go through, especially at her age. It's you know, something that she struggled with. And she ended up having kids young. Mm-hmm. And she was on, I think, her 3rd marriage by the time she was 18.
Wow.
And had a couple of miscarriages along the way and a stillborn. So my oldest sister my mom was 18 when she had her. And she went through that, and then abusive marriage, and then was in the middle of her divorce when she conceived me with a boyfriend who was married at the time. And I've only met him once when I was 18, and didn't have a great experience with that. And one of my sisters went with me to visit him in Missouri. And
Let me ask you this before you go there. How old were you when you found out all of this information? Because so your mom was in the middle of a divorce and basically had a new boyfriend, got pregnant with you, but he was married already.
That's correct.
And so then where did it go from there?
So I didn't find out that my sister's dad was not my dad till I was 12.
Wow.
And it was a crazy story where, like, I was homesick or something from school, and we were watching TV, and it was like Oprah or something. And it was some kind of family episode. And I'm like, man, that'd be really crazy, you know, if you didn't know who your family was. And my mom's like, well,
No time like the present.
no time like the present. Apparently most of the family knew, but I didn't.
That's wild.
Which is already a weird time to kind of figure it out, because already when you're homesick, there's nothing on TV. It's just like infomercials and daytime TV, soap operas.
Yeah.
So why not? Yeah. Learn
Price
about
is
that.
Right. That's about all you had, right? Bob Barker raised us all. No, it was one of them things. I'm like, wow, that's pretty wild. And then my stepdad had been in my life for a long time, and he's like, you know what? let's make this official. You know, I'm your dad, so I'll adopt you. And then that started the process when I was 14. It went through and name change and all of that stuff.
Because he became your stepdad at what age?
3. They got married when I was 3.
And so at 14...
At 14.
It was official.
It was official.
Okay.
He was dad.
Yeah.
Growing up, we didn't go to church as a family.
Yeah.
My dad grew up Presbyterian, and my mom grew up Church of Christ. So the only thing they agreed on is that Jesus is the way. You know? But growing up in Mumford, I grew up in the city of Mumford downtown. So the Mumford Baptist bus would come around. And a gentleman named, I don't know, Mr. Bill, I'm sure he's long past, but he's, hey, get on the bus, let's go to church. Okay. So I'd get on the bus and go to church.
Wow. At what age were you when you were doing that? Like I just can't imagine.
7, 8,
That's
9
crazy.
years old. 9 probably.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't go all the time.
Sure. It's just a different world we live in now, though.
Yeah, I mean, stranger tells you get on the bus, you know.
Man, yeah.
I'll
Here's
be
some
back later.
candy.
I'll be back later, Mom.
Yeah.
And one of my sisters ended up getting married over there at the church. So
So let me ask you this, because just to kind of dive in a little bit. So when you were 12, homesick, and they told you, hey, by the way, who you thought was your dad this whole time, it's not your dad. Because it wasn't even your current stepdad.
that's correct. It was
That
my
they told
mom's
you.
ex-husband, whose last name I had,
Okay.
was the guy who I thought was my dad.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was like, man, 12-year-old mind trying to process all this? Where did you go? Were you like
Shock.
angry?
No, yeah.
Dude, he was sick, man. He
No,
didn't know.
I mean, it wasn't like, you know, it was confusion.
Sure.
I mean, it's a very confusing time. Didn't know really who to turn to, especially I had a lot of questions about, she moved us there when I was little for 3 years when my dad. So when I say dad,
Yeah.
stepdad, he had a massive heart attack and ended up having to stay in intensive care for like 3-4 months. He pretty much slept through Desert Storm.
Yeah.
In ICU. So me and my 2 sisters got sent to their dad, who I thought was my dad. And we ended up there. I mean, I went preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So at that point, obviously you find out the news. I mean, do you and your mom have a good relationship at this time? Like when you find this out? Or was it kind of strained a little bit, and then this just kind of added to maybe some strain, or what was that relationship like?
So my mom and I have always had a decent relationship. There's some struggles from my childhood where my mom, like I said, man, she had a heck of a childhood. She could write a book. She should. A lot of tough love that when you're that young, especially in our generation, you know, it was like, hey, Mom, can I go hang out? No. And I'm like, man, I did all my chores. No, you know, that kind of stuff. Our relationship's been good, and it could be better. Like most sons and mothers probably could work on that. A lot of questions and confusion, but my dad was great about that. He ended up passing when I was 17, 4 days after my 17th birthday.
So do you think, looking back, if he had not passed away when you were 17, that you would have searched out who your biological father was?
He had told me anytime I wanted to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I kind of just wanted to see where I'd come from.
Sure.
So I show up. I mean, I'm 18, just graduated high school, you know.
Yeah, walk us through it. So where was he living?
Sykeston.
Okay, so
Crazy enough, his wife worked with one of my aunts, one of my mom's sisters, and she kind of asked in passing about me.
Yeah.
She knew about me. Very rude lady. And she said something, you know, like whenever I was about to leave, and she's like, you know, write to us. I said, I'll never talk to y'all again.
Right.
You know, I wanted to see where I come from, and apparently it ain't much.
Right.
And I have a half brother that I've never met. He was there and did not want to meet me. His fiance met me, and she's like, man, you look just like your brother. You're just like him. It's like, well, I kind of don't know. Never met the guy.
Right.
And I've thought about trying to reach out to him now because I think both of his parents have passed.
Yeah.
I think my birth father died 2016, maybe.
Okay.
So, and my dad died, like I said, in 2003.
Okay. So, man, come on. You got to tell us the story. So, you and your sister
Yeah.
go up. Just
Yeah.
one sister or two sisters?
Just one of my sisters.
one of your
my
sisters.
closest sister to me. She's 4.5 years older than me.
Okay. So, you're like, all right, we're going to do this thing. Let's go.
We went up there.
You just had, how'd you get the address?
So
up to Sykeston.
up to Sykeston.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so my mom was like, hey, if you really want to reach out to him, we can find out his name and number and stuff. So we find out where he is and who he is. And I call him and I talk to him. And he's like, oh, I'd really like to meet you. So my sister and I would kind of like go to Sykeston and go to like Walmart. Because, this is way before smartphones and all that. So we're sitting at the Walmart and I call him from a payphone. Let's age ourselves here. And I call him from a payphone, and he's like, oh, man, I can't make it over there. Won't you come to my house? Here's my address. So we go into Walmart and get a map. And
Print out MapQuest.
Well, we just find a map. Come to find out, my great aunt, which is my grandpa's sister, who was like a grandma to me, because like I said, my mom's mom died when she was 12 in a car accident. So she was my grandpa's sister, who's like my grandma. Man, she's a wonderful, God-fearing woman, amazing woman. She lived like, 2 blocks from me. And I used to go up there every summer.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Wow.
what? This is crazy. And we ended up spending some time there. And come to find out, they were foster parents. I'm like, foster? You don't even take care of your own kid, much less you're taking care of somebody else's.
Wow.
And it was very intense. She's like, well, are you here for money? Because we don't have any. I'm like, no. I literally just told her I came to see where I come from, and it ain't much. And then
You told them that?
Yeah, I did. You can ask my sister
it was-
Jennifer. Oh, she was
Like when you told me, like they were super cold.
cold. And my sister Jennifer's like, I thought I was going to have to jump in there. She said, but you totally just handled everything. I'm like, well, I didn't want anything. I told him I had a dad, and he was fantastic.
Right.
Like, that's the dad I strive to be for my son.
Right.
Is that dad, not
Right.
you.
Right.
That dad.
Yeah.
And she straight up asked me, well, you need to write, when you're in college and tell us how you're doing. And I told her, you'll never hear from me again.
This is the spouse, the
Yes.
wife
Who-
of your biological dad.
who has been married to him the whole time.
Oh, wow.
So they went through my mom and
Did
him
she
cheating.
know the whole time
I'm
that,
assuming.
about you?
I'm
Or was that kind of more of a recent shock for her too?
No, I
Maybe,
think
right?
she knew because she kind of was asking my aunt about
Okay.
me. I think.
Okay.
I don't think it was like a hidden secret.
Yeah, yeah.
Just to me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So do you feel like, and I'm going to ask this,
Go with
and I
it.
mean it in the nicest way possible, do you feel like some of your responses directed at her and them, like seeing where I came from, it's not much. I had a dad. He was great. He wasn't you. Do you feel like some of that was kind of your way of kind of subtly expressing some hurt in the
100%.
moment? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I always feel like I've been a believer in Jesus. I wasn't active in church or nothing like that then. My family was really big into a civic organization that we spent more time doing that than going to church as a family. It basically ended up being, I didn't know what I would get from that relationship. I didn't feel like there would be a relationship.
Yeah.
And I kind of like cut my losses before I could get really invested in this thing and really get hurt.
Yeah, and I think it's normal. I mean, that's why I say it gently, is because I don't think there's just a lot of people that would handle it well
Right.
and just be like, "Oh, I'm gonna demonstrate Christ in this situation,
Sure.
and I'm gonna turn the other cheek." But I mean, I imagine it comes with so much emotion.
Well, you
Especially
gotta-
with a negative
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's
And
cold,
reception,
and-
yeah.
We're only a year removed from Dad dying
Yeah,
at
yeah.
this point.
Sure.
You know, so I'm
You got a lot of emotions then going on, swirling around. Yeah.
My mom moved during my senior year because we ended up having to let our house go because my dad's daughters, because my dad was previously married and had girls, they ended up basically coming after my mom for stuff. And we didn't have any money. I mean, my dad was a truck driver. That's what he retired from doing. He was in the Navy a long time ago, but he retired as a truck driver. There was not a lot of money. And so they came after my mom for money. And my mom had to file bankruptcy. And we lost the house that I grew up in. I mean, all of my sisters were married at this time, raised to make me feel like I'm their brother, right, my whole life. And then here I am going into my senior year, and my mom's having to move out of the county to find somewhere to live. So luckily, a friend of mine's family opened their doors to me. and I was able to stay.
Mm-hmm.
If not, I'd had to move out of the county, and that would have really made the situation worse.
Yeah, no doubt. Man, I don't know. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it because I remember we had a friend of ours who was adopted, grew up, great childhood, the whole thing, and just never wanted to pursue finding biology. And I was just like, for me, like, just like I wanted it for her. Like, I just, just the curiosity aspect of it, of just like, I would
The way Jeff's wired, I could see you like
Yeah,
having a
man.
whole plan on some scavenger hunt. Here's what we're gonna do, and they're like,
Well-
I don't want to know.
So my best friend growing up, he had a similar situation. His stepdad raised him.
Yeah.
And we were in a little band together, and we were playing a gig at 16, and his birth father showed up. And he's like, what is happening here? And we're like, dude, you look, what? And he's like, I didn't know he was going to be here. So apparently our drummer in our little band we were in's mom and his stepmom worked together. And she kind of let her in like, hey, guess what? They're playing a gig over here. You might want to come bring his dad and meet him. And that's the first time they met.
Wow.
So that was my best friend growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much to wrap your mind around. How would you say finding out all of this, handling that situation, how would you say that shaped your view of God because of your earthly father situation?
You know, surprisingly, it didn't really affect it. Like I said, I've always felt a strong connection. So going back to living in Missouri when I was little, so my sister's dad had a crazy childhood like my mom did, and he had some things happen in his past. And as things happen sometimes, those things get passed down to the next generation, unfortunately. So I would get up and go into my sister's room when we were living there, and I would go climb into bed with her because I'm like, well, if I'm into bed with her, he's going to leave her alone, type of thing. You know, nothing's ever going to happen to anybody if we're all. And I'm like 5, 6 years old, and I'm laying there, and I see Jesus, like the Christ, standing there, and I sit up in the bed. And to this day, I can still see him. And I've told my mom this story since I was a little boy. So she's like, man, I can't believe that. But it wasn't like the Jesus you see that's all beautiful. It looked like he just came off the cross. Like he is ragged and ripped and not even wearing shoes type of thing, been through it. He looked at me and walked into their dad's room. And it wasn't long after that he was saved. And his whole life changed.
Wow.
I mean, went 180. And looking back, I'm like, man, after seeing that, how can I not believe?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like I said, 5, 6 years old
Wow.
when that happened. And my wife, we were at a friend's house, and y'all heard that story, that little girl who painted Jesus.
Yeah.
And my wife flipped it and turned it to me, and goosebumps. I'm like, that's him.
Wow.
And she's like, really? I said, she nailed it.
Yeah.
If he was all clean, I said, that's Jesus
Yeah.
right there.
You know, there's another story about that. You know, the kid, there was a kid who had that near-death experience. I forget, and they wrote a book about it. And
And did they do a movie too?
yes.
Yeah. Where he like falls in the water or something.
I don't remember the details.
Keep going.
But they asked him, so the same thing happened to him, but he said, because he came back and said, hey, I saw Jesus. So for years, his parents or somebody would show a picture. Is this him? No. Is this him? No. And that girl painted that picture, and he's like, yes.
Yes, 100%. I mean, we were at our friend's house who were believers too. And when Barbara flipped it around, I'm like, oh my God, that is Jesus. That is him.
Yeah.
That is my Jesus.
Wow.
And, it wasn't long before that his dad had died. His dad had cancer and committed suicide. And we had went over to his grandfather, who I thought was my grandpa at the time, right? So we went to his house, and they found him while we were there. And I was like 5, and it wasn't long after that he was saved.
And this is your dad.
Well, this is my sister's.
Got it. All right, I'm tracking
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. I know
Got it.
it's hard
No,
to
no,
keep
no.
up. You know,
No, I'm
we need a
tracking.
Rubik's cube over here.
Because you got your dad, and then you've got your
my
sister's
birth father, and then there's their
Correct.
dad, who
Their
I thought
dad.
was my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, the scale of 3 dads.
Yeah.
Right,
So let me ask you,
right.
that, even though that was 5 or 6, and even if you carry this forward, and again, I'm not trying to pull something out of this that's not there, but like, is there any moment in that background of a story, and then leading into like high school and finding things out, and then just even your dad passing away, where like you have a moment where you're just like, man, like I just need a breather.
Yeah, I think that hit me in college. So fast forward, go to college, get into UTK in Knoxville, and trek off to East Tennessee. And no one in my immediate family at that time had ever been to college. So here I go off as the prodigal son. Go off and do great things. Well, I have an eye condition that a lot of people haven't heard of. It's called keratoconus. So my cornea is shaped like a football instead of like a basketball. And I started praying then on it. I'm like, God, where do I need to be? And so, crazy enough, my mom had gotten sick. And she was living with her boyfriend at the time. And I'm like, maybe I can help her a little bit. Couldn't help her a lot. I'm 21, 22 at the time. Come back, move in with a buddy and his family, and end up getting a job working as a contractor in Memphis for MLG&W. And I met my future sister-in-law there. She was training me, and she's like, "Man, you need to meet my sister. You two would hit it off." Now here we are, 17 years down the road, and I'm married to that woman.
Yeah.
But if I wouldn't have been in that hole that I was in, and my mom not having to go through what she went through, I probably never would have came back to West Tennessee. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, man. I think sometimes we miss sight of like, and it's never to glorify, probably some of the darkest parts of our stories, but the Lord could have had you on that path to be there for your mom, meet Bart, right? All those things, but there's always these other little details that we kind of make decisions on. Where did it have to be so rough, right, or filled with these things? Like it potentially could have still led to that, but there's things along the way that we make decisions on, and kind of results in some.
No, that's
some
a good
pain,
point. A lot of times we look at the whole story and we think that whole story had to happen in order for that thing to happen. But, you very well could have not had to turn to alcohol and hit rock bottom to go home to take care of your mom, to meet her.
That's right.
And so same kind of thing there. But, why do you think receiving that news, it seems like that hit you harder than all this other heavy stuff as a kid? Like that one just took you out. Feels like. Why do you think that was?
I think it's more though, like as an adopted wall drop man, that is their identity. My dad had uncles who fought in World War II because my dad was a lot older.
Yeah.
He was 21 years older than my mom. So he was born in 1937. So if you frame that to like 2003, I'm getting the raising for most people, our generation's grandparents, right? So the old school generation's raising. His mom was born like 4 years before the Titanic sank.
Oh, wow.
And that was grandma, His dad had died young. But the wall drop men were military men. I've had cousin go to the Citadel in South Carolina, and his 2 boys, who were wall drop boys, went to the Citadel. Both of his brothers and him were all in the military. I think his uncle was like one of Patton's drivers or something in World War II, and then he had a cousin who was a Green Beret in Vietnam. We're talking legacy.
Yeah.
As a wall drop man, that was expected. And I've had nephews, after that's his grandsons that have gone on to serve. It's one of them things that I felt that was my identity as a wall drop.
Well, I can kind of see that now too, hearing the whole story and just how much of an impact he had in your life, and then to adopt you, and then to adopt that legacy,
Right.
and then to feel like now that he's passed, that man, I can't fulfill that legacy that I was adopted into. I feel like I'm failing him in some way.
And I was his only son. And that's really important to me, is he chose me. And in the same way that God chooses all of us and Jesus chooses us, that man chose me to carry his name.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to live up to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing when you're born into a family and you're like, well, this is just how it worked. But the way that,
In my mind, there's a joke where it's like, well, I didn't pick that,
Yeah.
totally. But you're like, yeah, like you were picked, you were kind of brought in.
That's
to
what
the
Tommy's
fold.
parents said.
Well, I've always said, man, why couldn't I be born to someone like Oprah or someone
Right.
rich?
we weren't that. I had a wonderful mom and dad who both worked very hard. And like I said, he was sick a lot of my childhood from heart conditions.
Yeah.
Tough life. And it ran in his family, heart problems. I mean, his dad died at 50 from a heart attack, fell dead. And my dad was actually in the Navy whenever his dad passed and didn't make it back to his funeral in time. So, I mean, it's one of them things that whenever it came to the family unit, like my sisters all basically, I don't know, going for themselves, and I need to work on that relationship because I don't have a relationship with them now, and I think a lot of that has grown with me as growing in my walk in Christ, that I need to settle that relationship with them, and I've considered reaching out to them because I believe they're all three of them are still local.
Yeah.
I mean, all their kids are grown now. I mean, they're all in there. I think my dad's youngest daughter is almost 60 if she's not already. And I mean, and they don't know me as married. They don't know my son, and I think they probably need to know their nephew,
Sure.
especially that carries the Waldrop name, because I was blessed. We prayed for our son for a long time because doctors told my wife she couldn't get pregnant, and then on her 30th birthday, we find out, hey, guess what? Here he comes.
That's awesome.
And so now I get to carry that.
Yeah.
I think the military side of things is something that I felt I was letting him down. And I know, like, I wasn't.
Sure.
I couldn't control that.
Yeah, that's out of your hands.
And looking at it from almost 40 to when I was 20, I can see that. In that moment, I couldn't.
Yeah. It's always harder in the circumstance, while it's unfolding. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. I remember for me specifically when my oldest was being born, and like just the weight of responsibility, when that child comes into this world, because up until then they're just like a little weird image on a sonogram, you're like, but then when the reality, just that, man, I gotta protect, I gotta provide, all that kind of stuff. What kind of flooded your mind with, I'm a dad to this little boy that you blessed me with? Like, what did you set out to do different, maybe, or to emulate even? Because you said your dad.
Yeah, our dad was great. Man, it didn't really hit me till like a week after he was born. I don't know about you guys, man. My wife, of course, women, they're intimate with it the whole process. They get to feel life being created.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to hear my wife's perspective of that from my answer. I was in shock.
Yeah.
But I did feel the responsibility. And again, I was blessed to be 32 when he was born and not 22 or something, I believe God knew that I needed that time to grow up.
Sure.
I was stable in my job at the time. I mean, I was 7 years into a career that I'm still in. Those kinds of things where we were more settled. And it was definitely in God's timing for sure.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Well, I think too, man, you touched on the adopted thing and the identity being in the military and making dad happy and all that stuff. But this is what blows my mind. The longer I live and the more I think about stuff is like, it's easier to take the personal experiences. Like, man, you were adopted in to like taking your dad's name and you didn't want to let down dad. And your identity was like, man, if I can't do this thing, then I don't want to do anything. But I think about stuff like that, and I always think of, maybe I go a little deep, but why do we not do that with the Lord?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're adopted into His
100%.
family as believers, and sometimes we let life get the best of us, and we're like, oh, it's just easier not to be focused on Him. It's easier not to lead my family. It's easier not to do this thing. And all the while, you take a personal experience that's very real, and man, like, you took that on. Like, you bore that identity, and you're like, this or nothing.
This or nothing, man. 100%.
So that's where my mind goes sometimes,
Yeah.
because I think it's always good to pull personal experiences and be like, man, like, there's things we can learn from that.
Yeah, I think it comes back to, as well as my wife's relationship with the Lord has been from the beginning. I mean, if the church doors were open, she was there. And she grew up in a rough area in Memphis to where she felt God by being in church. And so as our relationship has grown through the years, I feel like my walk with the Lord is finally getting to a place to where I can lead the family.
Yeah.
And coming to church and wanting to be here. I mean, because we've dabbled in churches around the area until we, came here, and we're like, man, this feels like home.
Right.
It's in our community. It feels like we should be here. And this is the first time where my wife was like, man, you want to be just here. And I'm like, yes, let's do this.
Right.
And so I believe that was Jesus coming to me and be like, hey, man, this is it. This is where you need to be. This is where your son needs to be. This is where your wife needs to be. This is where y'all need to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. So to kind of wrap up this time, what would you tell a young boy or a young girl who's finding out the information that they were adopted or who their parent they thought that wasn't? Mm-hmm. What kind of wisdom from your journey would you pass along to them? A truth to remember.
I know it sounds kind of cliche, but you're not alone. There's a lot of us out here that had a parent who stepped up and became the parent you needed. And there are a lot of folks who go through it and not have that,
right?
Who are fine, they might not know any of their parents, and that'd be really hard. I would say as I've gotten older, getting into the Word and being around guys like you, that, you fellas here that really help push to where I need to strive to be in my walk. The young people, I mean, don't give up.
Yeah.
Your identity doesn't have to be your parents' identity. And that's my walk has led me there, that as long, I believe if I could pull my dad here, if I could sit Jim Waldrop right here in this chair, he would tell me, son, your walk with the Lord is more important than anything you could have ever have done.
That's huge.
And I feel his walk with the Lord was more in the end of his life. The going to church thing as a family wasn't at the Waldrop house, but the love of Jesus was there. Even if we weren't in a corporate church.
Yeah.
And I believe his walk with the Lord was in the right place.
Yeah.
And I believe that's where he would want me to lean on, is like, look, the stewardship you're doing in your marriage, the stewardship you're doing in your home with my grandson is more important than the identity you would have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, to touch on a little bit, I think that's where, if we tie back to the big picture, there's going to be tons of examples, tons of stories, tons of upbringings, some that we've had on here, some of our own stories. But this is where you can look at God and go, why?
Yeah. Or
you can look at it and go, he's the creator, he's God, he's friend, and everything in this world became what it was never meant to be. And so that's where we can look to the good Father, and he feels for those that are in situations, because like, man, hey, you know what? Is that what he had planned for a Bobby? Man, no, but you know what? People made decisions, and those decisions had like a ripple effect.
100%.
But it never changed how good he still is.
Right.
Well, even if thank God my mom did not think, let me go to a clinic and end this.
Yeah.
Because she was in a very bad place in her own journey. She was
and here she is pregnant again.
Right. I mean, she's in the middle of a divorce, and the guy who she thinks is going to be the next best things is married.
Right.
And even in their sin, because let's call it what it is, even in their adultery, that's not me.
Right.
That doesn't define me.
Yeah. Sure.
And I am still, a son of Christ.
Yeah.
That's another message that needs to be shouted to the folks in the back is, abortion doesn't have, abortion is like in game for the life that's inside that mother. And if there's any message in this, any hope that's out of this, is just like you said, you're thankful your mom didn't make that choice.
100%. Yeah.
And so I would say this too: if there's a young lady out there who is contemplating abortion, think about the life that's inside of you, and that life doesn't have to be while it might be a product of something negative, God turns that into something for His glory.
Well, man, He loves that person. Like, that's the biggest thing. I think there can be shame and guilt. I can't even imagine what your mom's thinking. And, there's this guy, and then to your point, he's the next great thing. And then doesn't happen the way that maybe she thinks. And just the thoughts that can go through someone's mind to go, man, what are my options? But even then, feeling shame and guilt, and we're thankful that you're here too, Bobby.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
no,
man.
I'm really thankful that even in my mom's situation she was going through, I could only imagine her prayers during that time, and her struggles during that time. And I've never really sat down and talked to her about what was her mental process through all of this.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, I'm here, so she chose what she thought was best at the time, which was to have me, and I'm grateful for that. I just couldn't imagine being in that situation where you're coming out of a abusive relationship and you fall into the next thing that you think is it, and it ends up, not being what you thought it would be.
Sure. Yeah. No, I love that. Our identity, and I think we are all on that journey of learning who we are in Christ, regardless of, our upbringing. And, I appreciate you being open and honest and sharing your story with us, man. That's awesome. And I love that you're providing for your son a whole different experience that you had.
Let's break the curses, people.
Let's do it, man.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I love it. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Appreciate you.